Okay, so good day, class. So this week we're going to discuss about the construction process. Okay, because that's something that you must understand. Now that you have an idea on how to do your plans, your complete plans, you as future architects, you also have to understand how to execute and construct those. So when you construct something, the first thing you do is to stake out the building. Okay, so when you say staking out, you're going to measure the different. You're going to measure the locations and verify the locations of your columns and where your footings will be. Okay, so staking out is the process of relocating the point of boundaries and a proper line the site where the building is to be constructed. So this is something that you do in coordination with your geodetic engineer. Will survey uh, the light location for the property. Okay, so that's one of the importance class in when you secure um, floor plans. I mean, complete building plans from the office of the building official because you're going to verify where your lot should have been located. Because if you don't get a building permit, then you just build something. There's a possibility that you are building on the wrong lot. Now, it could lead to a lot of complicated problems in the future like litigations, etc. Okay, so the part is taking out. Okay, so don't worry class, I'm just going to give you an overview for this one. I'm going to post the PowerPoint later on. Okay, now let's go to the second stage, laying out the batter boards. Okay, so the batter boards, this horizontal boards establishes height of the footing trenches, establishes height of finished floor levels. Okay, so one thing you must remember, class, when you're constructing, in the process of constructing already, is that your finished floor line should always be higher than the street level. So when you do your plans, you don't indicate the distance from the NGL to the finished floor line. You should indicate the distance from the street level to the finished floor line. Okay, so there's a big difference between your NGL and your street level. Your house should always be higher than street level because if you indicate in your plan that your house is, you don't indicate that your plan is higher than the street level, and there's a tendency that the building you're going to construct might be flooded, especially when you construct it below street level. Okay, so always remember that class. Okay, so these are the different notes. So remember this, you have the spirit level, an instrument or tool capable of vertical and horizontal line check. You have your plumb bob. So it's a weight of string to attach is used for vertical line check. So your plumb bob class is something that you're going to use, especially when you do your hollow blocks. So always tell your foreman or at the site to always check if it's level because once you piled up your hollow blocks on a certain height, then it's not level. You're going to have a problem during plastering. Okay? So it won't be straight. Once that it's already constructed that way, it's going to be very expensive to change it. Then you have your plastic hose filled with water. So a method of leveling horizontal is boards with transit, and you have 3, 4, 5 multiples use of steel tape measure. Manual method of squaring the corners of building lines in staking. Okay, so and then you have your formwork and shoring. So your formwork is used to shape and support fresh concrete until cured and able to support itself. So when you go to construction sites and you see um, plywood or plyboards, so you're going. That's where your concrete will be filled to a certain shape. And your shoring, which is the temporary supports to carry forms for beams and slab. One thing that you must always remember, class, is that when you choose a material for your formwork, is that it should be of sufficient strength to hold the concrete. Because once it once when you pour the concrete and there's some movement which will happen, what will happen is that you're going to have a column that is not shaped according to the plan. Okay, so you're going to have a lot of problems. So two materials for shoring construction are one is lumber and the next is steel. So the most common class is lumber. Okay, but the disadvantage of lumber class is that you can use it for one or two more times, at most three, but after that it's going to be useless. Okay, so it's not something sustainable. Then you have steel. Steel is quite expensive at first, but if you look at it in the long run, if you have used steel for shoring in construction, it's going to be very much cheaper because you can use this more than for a very long time, more than 10 times or for a very long time, depending on how you take care of your materials inside. Okay? Then it's really hard to dispose of excess lumber. Okay? When you have already used a lot of it, so you need to have a big uh, warehouse or bodega to store it. So that's the problem with lumber as. But steel, you can use it infinite number of times, and it's also strong and durable. Okay, so these are the common terms you're going to use. So we call this the knee brace. This is going to be the kicker, but this is a plywood form class. You have your braced P&L heads, your single post wood shore. So when you say shore, they are shoring. These are the supports for your plywood forms. This is a wood shoring, and this is a metal shoring. So you have here adjustable metal shores, and this is the bracing to make it stronger. You have your stringers, the jack, the metal or wood joist. Okay. So these are your forms and the shoring class. It's very these are very important during the construction process. Okay, so this is another example of wood forms. So we have here the wood formworks, and in between here you're going to pour the concrete to shape it in a square. So you have here your yokes, your clamping devices for keeping column forms and tops of wall forms from spreading. Okay, then if you're going to uh, use it for your walls, you have your wall forms. Okay, so this could either be of plywood or phenolic, or form ties, the plywood, horizontal studs, and the wood studs. Now, the disadvantage of using plywood glass is that it's not always very smooth when you remove it. Okay, sometimes you can use it only once, or I mean, two times or three times at most. Uh, but the surface is not going to be perfect. But when you use phenolic boards, when you remove the forms, it will have a very smooth surface. Okay, but phenolic boards, they are like steel forms, steel shoring. It's quite expensive at first, but the value comes when you're able to reuse it for multiple projects. Then you have your hero form ties. So you have your snap ties, which have notches or crimps that allow their ends to be snapped below the concrete surface after stripping off the forms. Then you have your she-bolts, which are consist of wheeler rods that are inserted through the form and spread into the ends of an inner rod. Okay. So the major components of metal shoring are the ledger, the brace with the diagonal, then the standard vertical component and accessories. You have the head jacks and bases. But these are just the basic tasks because there is a variety of uh, steel forms and shoring available in the market, which you will discover once you're already in the actual practice. Okay, so these are usual common shoring components. Okay, so I'm going to post this in our group page later on. Okay. So another thing which is important, you must browse through are the different construction tools and equipment. So as future architects, you must this is something that you should already have a grass on a van. So you have your hand tools to use power demand only. You have your power tools. Okay, class, this is really important. It's something you must familiarize yourselves because it can save you a lot in terms of labor cost when you have your own construction firm someday. And then you have your equipment, and then the heavy equipment. Okay, so for example of your hand tools, you have here your pry bar. So it's used to open boards used in forming concrete. Then you have your folding rule. This is tape measure and common for measuring boards. You have here your digital rule, your framing square, your level, and your chalk line. Okay, then the most common I think you can see is your slow hammer, your sledgehammer, standard screwdrivers, Phillips, spiral ratchet. Then you have different types of saws. So familiarize yourselves. So you have the rip saw, the crosscut saw, back saw, and the hacksaw. Then you also have different types of chisels. You have here the wood chisel, cold chisel, nail set, pipe wrench, brick trowel, bull float, and the blind riveter. Okay, so power tools class. So this is something that when you already practice, please invest because it's going to save you a lot of time. It's going to make your work more efficient and accurate. Okay, so one is the power drill, which is used to drill holes in the wood, metal, and concrete. Then you have the power screwdriver, which is used to install and move screws. Then you have the type of power saws. So radial arm saw, the table saw, portable circular saw, then the miter saw, and then the saber saw. But the problem here in the Philippines class is that there's only very few people who knows how to use the power tools. So even your labor force, it's rare to see um construction people who are very knowledgeable and experts in the usage of power tools. Most of them use manual in construction. But this is something that you must really invest less, because it will make your work much more faster and efficient. Then you have different types of hammers: the pneumatic hammer, the rotary hammer. You also have the nailers or nail guns. Okay, so instead of hammering your nails, you just use a gun. Then there's pressure to be applied. Then it's automatic. So it will already do something which will take 2 to 3 minutes for your carpenters using manual. Using your nail guns, it will just I think 1 to 2 seconds to finish. So that's how efficient power tools are. Okay, so uh, I think I don't know if you're already finished with your surveying class, surveying subjects. So you should be familiar with the transit, surveyors level, and the construction laser. Here also you have the water pump, which is used to pump water out of holes in the grounds of construction work can commence. Now, what's the significance of your water pump class? Usually, this is very useful if when you already excavated your foundation and then it rains, then your entire foundation is filled with water. So how are you going to get the water out? Well, of course, you can use the bucket. Slowly, you're going to remove the water, but it will really be time consuming. The best thing to do is use the water pump to remove the water. Okay, so you have your concrete pump. This is especially useful if you have projects that are multi-level or multi-stories, that you can just pump concrete from the ground up. Okay, then familiarize yourself with the different heavy equipment. So you have your backhoe, your trencher, excavator, front end loader, okay, scraper, then grader, then paver. So familiarize yourselves so that you can when your people aside will ask you on what heavy equipments that you're going to use, at least you know what's the purpose of the backhoe, what's the purpose of the trencher excavator. Okay, so It's going to review. These are the major parts of the building. So here you have the superstructure, which is the portion of the building above the ground. So above the ground, you have your superstructure, then you have the substructure, the habitable portion of the building below the ground, okay, so your basements. And then you have the foundation, the structural portion of the building that transfer the building's load into the soil. This is your foundation. Then there are three types of substructures. You have first the slab on fill, a slab which rests on ground and not suspended. You have the crawl space, in a building without a basement and unfinished accessible space below the first floor, which is less than a full story height. And here, a basement, which is the lower story of a building, either partly or entirely below grade. Okay, so we're going to end our lecture in the major parts of the building class for this week. So, for like what I've said last week, so that I don't want to drain you financially by giving another project, because I know that some of you may have been affected a lot by the pandemic. So I just need you guys to comment your name and section below, and then you you write your what your ideas about construction, especially in starting out. Okay, so do you have experiences before in the past in construction? So what can you say about it? What do you think needs to be improved, especially here in the construction industry in the Philippines? Okay, think, Because, but I think there's something that's missed here, which is something subject for debate, especially for those who are environmentally conscious. After you have done excavating the holes for the foundation, for the footings, um, you're going to do soil poisoning, which is to so that there won't be any termites, bugs, or insects in the area. So it was a common practice in the past, but it was told that soil poisoning destroys, kills, it poisons the water system underneath the ground also. Okay, so that's something to think about. This there are some standardized methods in construction which could be harmful for the environment. But how will you deal with the termites? Because termites are a big problem for homeowners. Okay, so I'm going to end this lecture class and see you next week. So I hope you will all keep safe and follow government regulations on the pandemic. Okay, so thank you and good day.